The moment blank, these two god-tier online gamers arrived in Discord, a world where games decide everything, they used the knowledge from their old world to become the kings of humanity, a race cornered by the other races. Now kings, and to solve humanity's problems of tiny territory and scarce natural resources, they aggressively expanded outward. Their moves went very smoothly. On an individual level, they won over a group of Flugel and an elf. On a racial level, they merged with the werebeasts, Siren, and Dampiers. Interestingly, among the folks who got merged in, quite a few had, like Blank, seen through the way to conquer this world. They just hadn't yet reached Blank's height. Before continuing the story, let's talk about the past of the Werebeast Nation, the Eastern Union. After the Great War ended 6,000 years ago, werebeasts with different physical traits each went their own way, endlessly repeating civil war and ceasefire, a fractured landscape of tiny scattered states with no unity. But this situation was pacified 60 years before Blank came to this world by a werefox named Miko. This werefox was formidable. In just half a century, she unified all the tribes, rapidly boosting the werebeast's overall national power into a single, vast ocean nation. Before pacifying all the tribes, Miko thought this: if this world changed for my sake, would people still be hurt? Still fear violence? Yes, the 10 Covenants did say plunder and killing without consent are forbidden, but that doesn't mean the strong must protect the weak. It means first get the other side unified, then plunder. Today's world is merely one more step of procedure. In essence, the theorem of the strong bully the weak hasn't changed. Interestingly, just like those challengers from another world, the young Miko didn't accept this theorem. What she wanted to pursue was the theorem that rather than crushing your opponent, cooperating is more advantageous. And then, as luck would have it, she encountered an Old Deus that was only faintly active, hovering between dream and waking, the Fox Shift God. To gain power, Miko said this to the god: if you beat me, this body of mine is yours to command until I die, or until I claim the throne of the one true God and hand it to you. Since becoming the one true God grants the Suniaster, and using the Suniaster could possibly answer the Fox Shift God's doubts, the god, without thinking it over, agreed to the game Miko proposed. The result of the game? The young Miko lost, as she'd expected, and the core of the god's power, its divine essence, attached itself to Miko. To the god, this outcome was like fraud, because she never imagined that besides being forced to provide power and help Miko, she'd also have to live on and witness what came next. Having gained the god's power, Miko quickly used it to sweep across the entire land realm. Caught in that storm was that lecherous old man, Ino. When the two first met, Ino assumed Miko was suppressing the other races by force. But after Ino lost the game against Miko, he finally understood. Miko didn't intend to rely on force alone. She would subdue each race, then return self-governance to them, and afterward establish the werebeasts' unified government, the Eastern Union, which, in terms of the systems we know, is a federation. Hearing this, I'm sure you all get it. In a world with no concept of a federation, Miko, by her own wits, devised out of thin air this kind of government, one that could stabilize each tribe with no one having to be sacrificed. Hearing Miko's dream, Ino made a pact with her. As long as Miko allowed him to propose to her, he'd stake his life to assist her. And so, these two powerful bloodbreak individuals joined hands. On one side, suppressing opponents with force. On the other, studying law, administration, governance, and other matters. Not only that, to counter the other races, They mobilized national resources to develop electronic games that had no spirits and couldn't be interfered with by magic. Since they're called electronic, naturally there'd be electricity. But in fact, the Eastern Union hadn't developed electric power back then. In other words, the true power driving the games was actually the gods' power. In short, it was through such a past that the Eastern Union came to be. Back to Blank. After solving the resource shortage, Blank decided to formally conquer this world, and their next target was the Old Deus. The reason they aimed at the top-ranked god was the consideration that the Old Deus hadn't chosen a plenipotentiary yet. By Sora's judgment, these gods had arbitrarily imagined the world Tet created to be a game where the Old Deus collect other races' game pieces. And since they fancied themselves players, naturally there was no need to choose a plenipotentiary. But the world Tet created isn't at all what they imagined. Since they haven't chosen one, we'll choose one for them. Sora, likely judging from Miko's past attacks, deduced that an Old Deus was inside Miko, and so they issued a challenge to this Old Deus. Unlike the end of the anime's first season, Plum was also present, meaning a total of 7 beings challenged the Old Deus. The scary part is, even in a big scene like this, Sora was his usual self, barging in without a shred of tension. Miko, while the god went to prepare the game, asked Blank to correct a mistake she'd once made. Why so serious? There's no way we can lose. After Sora finished his victory declaration, the game began. What they'd play was sugoroku. For friends who don't know what sugoroku is, put simply, it's a game where you roll dice and advance toward a goal. Of course, this isn't ordinary sugoroku. This is sugoroku the god prepared. In the empty void, the god created land and let it keep extending. After reaching a certain length, the land began rising, forming a spiral tower whose appearance was like a corridor of heaven reaching all the way to the moon. After who knows how long, when this group came to their senses, before them appeared 7 doors and a girl of indescribable beauty. Game start condition 1. The challenger's memories of the past 24 hours. Confirmed. Requisitioned. Game start condition 2. The life of the individual commonly called Miko. Confirmed. Requisitioned. What startled Blank and the others wasn't the girl's beauty, but the game start conditions. The first was no problem, but the second was this group could never unanimously agree to start the game with Miko's death. What is going on? Sora, Izuna, and Ino were all quite baffled by the situation, but Miko's corpse right before their eyes forced them to accept this fact. Then, disregarding their doubts, the god continued to announce the rules of the Sugoroku game. 1. Each participant will have power dice, apportioned in proportion to their own mass and duration of existence. 2. A dice holder may roll all their dice and advance a number of squares equal to the pips rolled. 3. The pips rolled are decided randomly, and after rolling, the holder loses 1 die. 4. If traveling together, they may only advance the pips rolled by the representative. 5. If more than 2 travel together, the number of dice lost is the number of companions multiplied together. 6. At the start, players have the right to create 50 tasks. 7. A task can force the dice holder who stops on a square to obey any instruction. 8. Unless a dice holder completes the task or stays 72 hours on the square, they cannot continue moving. 9. If the task is completed, the dice holder takes 1 die from the task setter. If not completed, the task setter takes 1 die from the dice holder. 10. Each task is written on a signboard and arranged in the squares in varying order. 11. A task can change the environment inside the square. 12. The following tasks are all void. A. Tasks specifying a particular target to answer. B. Tasks no one but the setter could complete, or that no player could complete. C. Tasks specifying the holder not advance by the pips rolled. D. Tasks requiring skills beyond human ability to complete. 13. The dice holder who reaches the final square becomes the saint, and the game is treated as ended. 14. The Old Deus is obligated to fulfill any request within its power for the saint. 15. When all players lose all their dice or die, it's deemed impossible to continue, and the game ends. 16. When the game can't continue, the Old Deus has the authority to requisition everything of all participants, except the leader. Addendum 1. Though the scenes in the game imitate reality, the phenomena that occur there, including death, are entirely real. Addendum 2. Among the dice holders, there is one traitor whose memory was not requisitioned. For all the rules just explained, I'm sure plenty of people have no idea what this game is even about. Simply put, each person rolls their own dice to advance, then on the square they stop on completes the task on the signboard. If they can't complete it, they must stay 72 hours. Ultimately, it's a race to reach the final square first. After announcing the rules, the god vanished along with Miko's corpse, leaving behind only the panicking otherworlders and 7 doors. In this game, without seizing others' pips, you can't reach the end at all. If one person can write 50 tasks, there'd be 351 squares total. Yet even rolling 6 repeatedly, you can advance at most 324 squares. This should be a game against the Old Deus. How did it become a game of players slaughtering each other? Setting aside Steph, whom no one knows why she's here, probably everyone noticed those problems I mentioned, and also realized this is a game you can only reach the end of by taking others' lives. If your dice count hits 0, you die. Following so far? To help Steph, who didn't even understand the rules, Sora loudly explained everything to her. And after hearing it, Steph naturally said she didn't approve of this game. Then let's do this. Sora's idea was, have everyone present concentrate their 9 dice onto one person and let just that one person roll and advance. Sora's proposal was good if this game had no traitor. Since the traitor hadn't admitted to being the traitor, you can assume the traitor has their own hidden win condition. And to prevent the traitor from winning, no one could go along with Sora's proposal. Let's just say I'm the traitor. Hearing Sora say this, everyone could only stare in stunned silence. You think I won't betray you? So Sora pointed out one by one why each person present couldn't be the traitor. Eno lacks the nerve to stake Miko's life. Plum already lost so utterly he can't take that risk again. Jibril must obey Blank. Steph's too dumb. And Sora and Shiro are one. After rattling off a few reasons, Sora even outrageously demanded the others hand him their dice. Yet no one paid him any mind. Everyone knew this guy was just doing a one-man act. So they quietly entered their rooms to complete their tasks. After a while, the tasks were done, and they left their rooms and told Sora, "Challenge accepted," before each rolling their own dice and moving forward. Sora acted this outrageously for 2 reasons. 1, he was certain the rules they just heard were a second version. 2, he'd concluded everyone would betray. First, Sora had no proof, but he was certain the members here wouldn't agree to start the game at the cost of Miko's death, nor allow a scenario of mutual killing. In other words, the fact that the game could still begin now meant the rules they'd heard should be a second version. As for the first version they'd heard, Sora guessed they'd only agreed to being able to betray one another. Second, Blank's group situation now was much like the prisoner's dilemma. When prisoners are interrogated by police, if they can cooperate, they'll get a higher value outcome. But if someone betrays, the betrayer wins alone, and the betrayed gets the worst punishment. And if both betray, the punishment is split in half. Normally, a prisoner tends to sell out the other, because by selling out, besides possibly winning alone, they can also avoid the worst outcome. But this is exactly the police's goal. The police want them to betray each other and all get locked up. Now, the situation Blank's otherworlders faced was the Old Deus had announced, "There's a traitor." In other words, their only path was to choose to betray one another. To make everyone truly betray each other, Sora deliberately said an obvious lie to provoke the group. Oh, of course, there was still one there who, even knowing Sora was putting on an act, didn't choose to betray. Steph. "I trust you won't let anyone die or kill each other." After voicing her opinion, she handed her 9 dice over to Sora. This act made the two of them change in appearance. Steph shrank to 1.8 years old, and Sora grew to 34.2. Interestingly, their bodies changed, but their inner selves, their souls, seemed unchanged. The baby-fied Steph still had a normal mind. Confirming Steph's transformation, Blank didn't feel threatened, so they let Steph travel with them. "If you don't come with us, you'll only have 1 die, waiting all alone." By the way, if you don't reach the end, everyone but the leader dies. Actually, under normal circumstances, because of Rule 5, moving as a trio is unlikely. But maybe Blank had foreseen needing a pack animal, or for some other reason. In any case, they lured Steph along. What Blank didn't expect was that after crossing the first square, they were filled with despair. Just crossing the first square took a full 5 hours, and they'd feel thirst and hunger. By Shiro's calculation, 1 square is about 10 kilometers, meaning the game's total length reaches 3,500 kilometers, which in lengths we know is the distance across the Americas. One's a princess, 2 are shut-in nerds. Making them advance on foot alone, who knows what year they'd arrived. And moreover, every time they advanced, their bodies would shrink. After confirming all this, Blank quit the game, bringing this work to an end. Of course, that didn't happen. As usual, Shiro exercised her superhuman calculating ability, using the nearby scenery to analyze the full layout of the Sugoroku world. It turned out this Sugoroku world was a copy of part of one of Disboard's continents. This deduced intel delighted Blank. First, there was no terrain along this route that a body of flesh and blood couldn't cross. Second, they could use the methods of civilization to aid their movement. 18 hours after the game began, Blank and company managed to capture a horse and build a carriage. 42 hours after the game began, when they'd advanced to the 38th square, they were chased by a horde of unintelligent beasts. Once I get home, I'm ordering someone to develop a sniper rifle. No sooner had he raised that flag than the hard-won carriage was destroyed by the beast's claws. Looks like it's really game over this time. Just as Sora truly thought they were done for, the next second, a huge crater appeared in the ground, a beast dead in its center, and the other beasts scattered. "This is Izuna's food, Des." It turned out Izuna's hunting had happened to save Blank and company. According to Steph, This group of large beasts should have been hunted almost to complete extinction by the other races after the 10 Covenants were established, so encountering them here was quite unnatural. You're really a handful, unbelievable, Desu. The reason Izuna appeared here, or rather was caught up to by Sora's group, was of course that Izuna was bound by a task. Please answer. In Dragon Quest V's marriage system, when Sora chose his bride, what was the option he first selected? This task didn't violate 12b, because Shiro also knew the answer. In fact, the tasks Blank wrote were all similar kinds of questions. 36 hours after parting with Izuna, once they'd stepped onto the 60th square, Blank could finally relax their guard and start analyzing each task and rule. On tasks, first, since 12a can't specify a particular person, a task setter can't demand immediate death. Second, a setter can't actually kill someone. If they really killed someone, the number of dice each side could seize would decrease, and for one thing, the setter's own chance of reaching the end would drop. Since you can't kill other players, the direction of task setting can only become betting on taking one die from the opponent. And to do that, there are roughly two approaches. One, tasks like blanks that only a specific person can complete. Two, tasks anyone can complete, but that would take another person over 72 hours to finish. For example, the one Izuna set on this square. Count every hair on your whole body, tail included, and give the correct number, Des. On rules, the curious thing is, if this were a game where the Old Deus wanted players to slaughter each other, then the Old Deus would have no reason to ban tasks only oneself can complete. Rather, it'd be best to let everyone set instant death if not completed tasks. This curious rule made Sora certain that the one who proposed this rule was himself. Just imagine, after confirming the rules, I'd shout, "Are you kidding? Then Jibril could just write spatial teleportation and it'd be flat out impossible." Then I'd say, "Tasks only you yourself can do? Ban them, ban them, ban them again." Since this game allowed Blank Side to add rules, then whose benefit is this game for? What kind of intent does it hold, and who started it? The one thing certain is that Blank would never allow a victory won through others' death or sacrifice, one worse than defeat. With a big smile, yank off that thing and let it die. Regrettably, Ino hadn't read the meaning behind the Sugoroku game. When he set his tasks, he kept believing Sora had killed Miko, and no matter what he rolled, he was thinking only of how to make Sora die. You old geezer, what nonsense are you writing? What great news! Mr. Sora actually stopped on my task. I did not stop on this. I'm just passing through. Smooch. What an unkillable cockroach. Even though Ino wasn't near Blank's group, they could still shout across the distance and converse. To think that to destroy me, you'd go so far as to let your granddaughter die? If Izuna carelessly walked onto this, she'd have to cheerfully yank off some animal's thing and let it die. Hearing Sora's explanation, Ino finally realized what a stupid thing he'd done and desperately begged Sora to lend him his wisdom to get a way to save Izuna. Fine, whatever dementia tasks you wrote, spill them all, down to the last detail. And so, Sora obtained all the tasks Ino had written. However, I'm not giving them to you. Actually, Ino's tasks had no compulsion at all. The instructions and objectives a task should have, not a single one was there. Simply put, encountering Ino's tasks, you either wait 72 hours or casually kill a mosquito, and it counts as done. Sora only said what he did purely to bluff Ino. Let's make a deal. I'll introduce you to some commoner girls. Just as Sora was about to accept Ino's terms and tell him the truth, Blank and company happened to cross the border and reach their destination. The task immediately teleported them into the air, dropping them toward the magma below to burn. Once again, they'd hit a task meant to kill, and if they didn't complete it immediately, they'd die instantly. You've got some nerve. I'll make sure you get what's coming in the end. Within seconds, Sora deduced this task was set by Plum. Give me your underwear. When Sora said this to Steph, it wasn't because he was thinking nonsense before death. It was that he needed an extremely flammable object. The moment Shiro sensed Sora's intent, she went and pulled off Steph's underwear, wrapped the cookies from her pocket in it, and threw it into the magma. The underwear burned up before even touching the magma. The task was deemed complete. The magma vanished, and the three plunged into the water surface that followed. It turned out Plum had no intention of winning the game at all, so he didn't need to set tasks the way Sora reasoned. So here's the question. Why did he still join the game? Why set such a task? You all should know, Plum is a Dompier, and in a game like this, moving out in the open under the sun, he can get no resupply at all. But even burdened with such an unfavorable condition, Plum still joined, from which we can deduce that Plum had prepared a scheme to win without reaching the end. And moreover, Plum even wanted others to seize that scheme quickly. As for why he wanted others to take it quickly and what exactly his scheme was, for that, just keep watching Volume 7, Part 2.